Hey everyone, yesterday Blizzard announced that they are no longer going to be releasing the promised campaign and hero progression systems for Overwatch 2. To give some context for people, back in 2019, Overwatch and Blizzard as a whole was in a pretty rough space, and the Overwatch team announced at BlizzCon in November that they would be releasing Overwatch 2. This would be a soft sequel to the original Overwatch game, where they were basically just upgrading the game as a whole and slapping the number 2 on it. There would obviously be quite a few changes with the game, like a visual overhaul as well as some new PvP content like new maps and heroes, but the biggest selling point of Overwatch 2 is going to be the new PvE content added to the game. PvE in Overwatch became super popular with the different small PvE modes that they had added throughout the course of Overwatch. I mean, Overwatch itself was kind of built from the scrapped MMO Titan that Blizzard had been working on, which obviously would have had a lot of PvE content. So the game itself has always had an air of PvE around it. But through Overwatch 2, we would be able to see this PvE content on a much higher level in multiple different ways. An entire campaign would be offered, which would receive multiple missions and stories added to the game that people could play together cooperatively. There would then be more PvE content that uses the same missions used in the campaign that people could replay in a different way to level up characters, and have a full hero progression system which would include talents and upgrading skills. And with the announcement of this, everyone who was watching, including myself, were super excited. Blizzard said that the reason this had to happen in Overwatch 2 instead of just adding it into Overwatch was because of limitations. And in the wake of this announcement, most of the Overwatch team began developing Overwatch 2 and all of its PvE content. And because of this, Overwatch was dead in the water. Beforehand, and for about 3 years after the announcement, there was almost nothing added to Overwatch. The game was completely stagnant and put on life support. And 3 years after the original announcement, Blizzard announced that they would finally be releasing Overwatch 2. Well, they would be releasing the PvP content and a bunch of other changes of Overwatch 2, and then they would be releasing the PvE content later, because the PvE content was taking too long to work on, but they wanted to update and upgrade the game. So in October of 2022, we got Overwatch 2, and there wasn't a ton of stuff with it. A few new heroes and a few new maps, one less person per team, a visual overhaul, some UI changes, and some other changes. But with the release of Overwatch 2, we also saw the removal of loot boxes, which removing loot boxes is generally considered a good thing, but what we got in place of loot boxes was even worse. Where now we have battle passes where you have to buy the battle pass in order to unlock skins, where originally skins were basically free because you could just grind loot boxes. With the battle pass, you also have to play through it to unlock new characters. And then there are also a ton of skins in the store that you have to spend money on in order to obtain them. So I guess in a way, Overwatch 2 really did shake up the Overwatch genre, but just in a different way than what people were expecting. But now 8 months after Overwatch 2 is released, PvE has been nowhere in sight, and now we have confirmation that the initial plans for PvE have been completely scrapped. There is still going to be some PvE content introduced into the game in the future. We'll see some limited time story-based events like what we've seen in the past. And then there are apparently a few other PvE types of content that will be added into the game, but it is expected that much of this will be locked behind battle passes. But as far as all of the initial planning and working goes, 3.5 years of development, plus however much development went into it beforehand, has completely gone out of the window. 3.5 years of people waiting for a campaign has been spent waiting for nothing. People enjoy different games, and people enjoy different aspects about certain games. When it comes to Overwatch as a whole, I guess we're not really losing anything because it was just an addition to the game on top of the original PvP game modes. So for people who enjoy the PvP of Overwatch, this news doesn't impact them and that they are not instantly losing something. It is, however, just instead that they have been slowly losing stuff over time. Less development time spent on PvE stuff like new content, and changes to the game over time that many people find detrimental to the health of the game. Again, people enjoy different things, but a lot of people, including myself, don't like the direction of the game since launch, where some people prefer different areas of the game, and then some people don't like the various changes to the game, like how the monetization has become worse with the release of Overwatch 2. So a lot of people, including myself, have just lost interest in the game over time. I used to play the game a lot from launch until I started getting bored of it in 2019. I played most competitive seasons, have hundreds of hours in the game, and watched most of the first 2 seasons of the Overwatch League. But as the years went on, I became less and less interested in the game. I started to take longer and longer breaks from the game, and then eventually stopped playing altogether. With the announcement of Overwatch 2, I became super excited about the game again, not because of the PvP changes being added, but because of the PvE announcements. I loved the feel of Overwatch, the graphics, the lore, the world, and I loved the PvE that had been introduced in the years prior. So a dedicated campaign with a ton of other missions and systems to support it sounded like an absolute dream for me. With the release of Overwatch 2, I started playing the game again but quickly got bored of it because it felt even worse to me than when I had originally quit playing a few years prior. And now we are here, where the one thing that had kept me interested in the game is gone, and while there are a lot of different people on the road with different opinions, you can see that a lot of people are in the same boat as me, where the only reason they have stuck around is to be able to play the campaign, and now there's no reason to stick around. Overwatch will always have a small place in my heart for me. It had a big impact on me as I was graduating high school, it got me more and more into esports, and I genuinely had a good time playing it. I'll always remember some of my favorite memories playing the game, like how I waited by my computer as the Overwatch servers went live, loaded into the game, freaked out at the opening cinematic, loaded into my first game outside of the beta, and played Hanzo on Hanamura defense. Good times. But as I've said, over the years I've become less and less interested in the game, and while there are many problems with the game, my loss of interest is mostly a personal issue, and now that the one thing that I was interested in is no longer going to be releasing, that years of development time has been flushed down the drain, that promises have been broken, and that the hopes of many people have been squashed, I just don't see many reasons to play Overwatch anymore.